As you start out on this journey and you're talking about stopping drinking alcohol, you have to think about it in terms of it's not just the alcohol that you have to get rid of. Alcohol is the fuel for the habit, for the routines, for the programming, for the rituals. And these things have been built up over years. These things have become automatic in your lives. When people talk about the habit itself, if I say to you, well, this is my habit, then it's easy to mistake the idea that just because I say a habit, you understand what I'm talking about. Everybody's habits are different. They're made up of, as I said, the rituals, the programming, the routines, the little things that we say to ourselves, the ways that we think about things, the way that we do things. When I went into a bar, I used to sit in the same chair, if I could, the same stool by the bar. And we wanted to drink the same Guinness, the same glass, not exactly the same glass, but the same type of glass, be served by the same people. We wanted familiarity because that is the way that your habit works. It's through familiarity. So you're dealing with that from the big level. And I think once people step across that line and they stop drinking, they attempt to stop drinking alcohol, then they start to look at their habit as this big thing that keeps repeating itself. These thoughts keep coming back, the same bullshit thoughts that they had every time they got to 20 days last time or 30 days last time. Or the same ideas happen, they go on a vacation and the same things happen. They go out with a certain friend and the same things happen. And these things are part and parcel of the habit. So they look at the habit then as being this huge, monstrous thing that they have to tackle, but they have no idea of where to start. Now, the only way to do this is to keep things as simple as possible, to keep things in the moment. That's all we're dealing with. So in order to keep things simple, we have to bring things back down to the most microscopic level that we can manage, not too small and not too big either. And that's dealing with things as they come up in the moment. For instance, if we're dealing with things about cravings or triggers or any of that stuff, the discomfort of the first few weeks, the thoughts that are going to come up in the subsequent weeks and months after you stop drinking, you can only deal with each one as it comes up. You can't deal with the cravings or the triggers that you had yesterday, right? They're gone. You can also deal with the triggers that you might have tomorrow. Real quick, I just want to announce that we've got a private coaching group starting on March the 2nd. We're doing intensive life coaching for 30 days. If you're looking to quickly get alcohol out of your life, then this is for you. Doors open next Monday. Because it's so intensive, I can only take on 15 people at a time. So if you're interested, get on the early access list. The link's in the description below. Okay, back to the video. What people look at is all the cravings that they've had in the past that they've given into because they got up to this stage of stopping drinking alcohol, and how many failures did you have before that? And that meant that every craving that you gave into, every trigger that you gave into, every thought that came into your mind that gave you a desire to have the drink or the reward at the end of the day that you gave into. And all of those are really infecting what you're thinking now, and they shouldn't be, because every moment going forwards, every trigger that you have going forwards, every craving is going to be different. It's different for you now in the moment in comparison to what was before. And it's certainly different to what other people are going through. Everyone has their own little demons that they have to sort out. Now, when somebody starts to think about never drinking alcohol again, what they do is unconsciously they imagine this never-ending line of craving or triggers or thoughts or desires stretching out into the future. Every trigger is craving, or a time or a place or a person, or just a thought, a desire to have something. And the only reason that those triggers spark off the behavior to have a drink and to get the reward, or what you think of is the reward, is because that is what you're used to, is because that is what has happened in the past. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to break that programming as much as possible. I mean, you can only do that in the moment. You can't break tomorrow's triggers today. You can't break yesterday's triggers today. Yesterday's triggers have already fired off. Tomorrow's triggers have yet to fire off. The only ones that you can deal with are the ones that are happening now. Let me give you an analogy. Think about it like one of these big cruise liners, and they have the huge big cables that they fire out and tethers them to the dock when they're in the dock. And each of these big cables is made up of thousands of these tiny strands of wire. Every time you ignore a trigger or you divert a thought, you do something different. You don't allow the trigger to spark off the drinking. Every time you do that, it breaks one of these strands. So you do this over and over and over again, and eventually the habit itself dies under its own weight, cannot hold itself together anymore because there's so many strands that are broken. I mean, we're talking about habits, not in terms of something that is that has got a hold on you. It's just an idea or a programming that is influencing you. And the less that you give into that programming, the easier it is, to do something else. Eventually, something will fire off, the trigger will fire off something different, or the trigger will just lose its own momentum. The trigger fires off, but it just doesn't register in your mind. The only reason that the trigger registers is because you're used to it registering. So, in the beginning, you have to be deliberate about these things. So when you get a thought, instead of reaching for the bottle, you go out for a walk, or you reach for a game, or you get up and have a dance, or you do something different. And in the beginning, it's going to cause you discomfort. There's no other way around it, but, it is what it is. The commitment is going to take a lot of energy in the beginning, but you're better off putting the energy into stopping drinking alcohol altogether rather than going through the process of trying to moderate, which takes energy over and over again and creates this horrible battle that you have to fight over and over again. The decision itself it can take a long time to get to that decision where you've made the choice to stop. You've made your decision. You're committing to it. And that commitment process, especially in the first 30, 60, 90 days, is going to take a lot of energy out of you because you're constantly having to think about it, constantly having to re-divert your mind into other things. But I guarantee you that once you get past this initial period, then the habit will lose its influence and you become much stronger because of it, because the inner conflict, that conflict of what shall I do now? How am I going to moderate this? How many drinks am I going to have? Who am I going to drink with? What days am I going to drink? I mean, think about what that does to you. And it's like I can't remember who said this, but which is the most difficult, fasting or diet? And it's always the diet, because with the diet, you've got choices. You've got ways of trying to weasel your way around things. Whereas if you're fasting, like intermittent fasting, I intermittent fast in the morning. I get up 4:30 in the morning. I don't eat until 10 o'clock, maybe 11 o'clock some mornings. And it's easy to do that because there's just one choice. I don't eat anything until that time. If I'm dieting, I'm trying to say, oh, well, what am I going to eat? How much am I going to eat? And some mornings I'll make something and I'll go, just a little bit more this morning because I'm hungry. It's not going to work. So it's the same thing here. Once you make the decision to stop drinking, you draw a line in the sand and you say, I'm not putting alcohol into my body anymore. It makes it so much easier to move forward because it is just that simple, yes or no. And every time you say no, it breaks one of those little strands. It breaks the habit long term. And that's what we're trying to do. By the time you get to a year in this journey, you'll hardly be thinking about alcohol. There'll be rare exceptions, when you have a really shit day or something like that, and a thought will pop up in your mind. But that's just a natural part of the process of thinking, that your brain will suggest this as an alternative. And it's just one of those things. All right, I'm going to leave it there for today. Hope you got something out of that. Onwards and upwards. Take care. Bye now.